you've got the sports, you've got the games that are happening, but how many of y'all have kind of watched an NFL game? Your team is up by 10, but your spread that you bet on is minus 10.5, and you need them to score a field goal, and they're not going to, right? We've all been there. That's part of the fan experience. But we've got a great group of panelists here with us in different backgrounds and different things that they do in terms of technology and different things like that. So let me go ahead and kind of introduce them one by one here. We've got Vin from Mojo. Vin is a co-founder and CEO of Mojo, which is a sports betting stock market that launched in New Jersey this past September. A serial entrepreneur. You've had a track record of success, best known for co-founding the internet retailer, diapers.com, with Mark. And then you're also the co-founder and CEO of two media companies, some Spider Studios and Cafes. So you've had a lot of success, man. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much.
Awesome. Looking forward to, especially where betting meets stock market. But next up, we've also got Lee Aho from Perform CB. Lee serves as the executive vice president of marketers at Perform CB, overseeing new business and strategic account growth. Since 2008, you've been an integral part of making sure the growth at Perform CB, and especially when it comes to helping brands and markets execute customer acquisition strategies on a pay-for-results model. Lee, pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Sinead. Happy to be here.
All right. And then the party continues onward. We've got Jamie, who's a co-founder and CEO of Gaming Society, which is a content and gamification company dedicated to reaching and engaging underserved fan demographics through narrative-driven content and no-risk games, something I need to learn about because I'm always losing money. But you previously also served as the CMO of Excel Sports Management, and you co-founded the Players Tribune with Derek Jeter, which we'll talk about here in a second. You've worked with hundreds of athletes to tell their story and also sold a series to Netflix as well. Jamie, happy to have you on.
Hi, nice to be here. Thanks, guys.
All right. And last but not least, we've got Joe from NASCAR. Joe's the managing director of sports betting at NASCAR. In Joe's role, he manages partnerships with sports books and fantasy sports partners of the world's leading motorsports property. Joe also works closely with the competition group at NASCAR to make sure that we've got integrity, and the government affairs team pursuing a legislation that ensures responsible gaming efforts and capitalizes on NASCAR's own track. Joe, pleasure to have you on, pal.
Thanks for having me, Zinead. Looking forward to it.
All right. Fan experience. I talked about how your team is winning, but you yourself may not be. That's one of the unfortunate experiences I've been on the bad side of. But I'd love to kind of go around the horn and talk about how your company is innovating, or what you all are doing to make sure the fan experience is positive in the world of sports betting. Vin, we'll start with you, then we'll go around the horn.
Great. Well, Mojo, as you described, we call it a sports betting stock market. And our vision, Mark Lurie, myself, Alex Rodriguez, who's another co-founder, and Bart Stein, we always thought that the best betting experience should be really something that is more akin to a Robinhood and how you would trade stocks. And when you do that, we always thought a stock market is more efficient, it's more fair, it's more transparent, it's more electric for the customer. And I can get into exactly how we do it if you'd like me to, which would then, I think, hopefully explain why we think it's the best live experience.
Yeah, I'll definitely come back to that. I've notated it. Lee, what about you, man? Fan experience.
Yeah, so our experience really starts on the front end, on the acquisition side. So through this morning's early sessions, we heard quite a bit of talk tracks around user acquisition. That's our role. So we're helping drive new users to sports betting companies on an outcome-based model, and looking forward to diving into how we actually go about executing on that.
Appreciate that. And I mean, who doesn't love, back in the day it was gentlemen start your engines. We've had a lot of female drivers now. I mean, NASCAR fan experience, the thrill of the car driving by you is great, but what about in the sports betting world, Joe?
Yeah, for sure. So NASCAR is, first and foremost, we're not a sports book, right? So we work with the sports books who are putting out our product to our fans, to maybe new fans as well. And what we want out there to the betting audience is a reliable, accurate, responsible product. So NASCAR is one of those unique sports similar to golf, where the full field of action is not typically always on the screen. You can't always see maybe your favorite driver at the moment based on a commercial break or whatnot, where we run constantly. There's no commercial breaks for stoppages in play. So our data feed and supply of that data feed is really important to sports books to create a good product for us. And it goes to the digital experience as well, and the at-track experience. So just like attending a pre-race concert or getting your favorite food at one of NASCAR's tracks. We want sports betting to be part of that experience as well, and something that we've been building on over the last few years.
And I know we're going to talk about how, when you're at the track, you may not be able to bet just yet, but kind of the different experiences that you can have. Jamie, when you and I talked, what I was intrigued with most with the Gaming Society was the, I think on your website, it's like bet on women or the women's sports. You just had the WNBA tip off here a few days ago, Go Atlanta Dream. But how is the Gaming Society helping with the fan experience?
Yeah, no, for us, I mean, I guess it's a couple of things. You're touching on bet on women, but before that, just to give a little bit of context, the thing for us, and it touches on betting responsibly, is that sports betting is the biggest growth industry in sports, but 80% of sports fans don't know how to bet. It's very intimidating. It's very inaccessible. And we really are trying to create just a more inclusive product to get more fans engaged and to feel like, people bet to have fun. It's driven by fandom. They do it for social reasons. And we want to create something that can target a more inclusive, everything that's out there, a lot of what's out there is targeting the avid bettor for good reason. And so we're really trying to create unique content, gamification experiences to onboard new fans or sports fans that are new or emerging bettors to be able to have skin in the game. So we prioritize two things. One is targeting women, right? 45% of NFL fans are women, 35% of NBA fans are women. I don't know the percentage of NASCAR fans, but there's a lot of women that are NASCAR fans. And we want to make sure that people are talking to that community and giving them the tools to be able to bet, but it's for everyone. It's not just for women. And the other thing we prioritize which is what you touched on, is how do we use the growth of the industry to propel women's sports forward? And gamification, I think we all know, is the future of fan engagement. Sports betting is ultimately gamification. So we're trying to make it so more people have access and can do it. And it's such an opportunity for women's sports. Our movement is called Bet on Women. We believe if you bet on women, you have to know who they are. And so we have a partnership with the WNBA. We're working with the NWSL. And we're working with a lot of athletes to make it so that we can show that there's an opportunity here, because, and I'll stop here, but we need to make sure there's equitable lines and odds so that people can bet on women's sports. And the disproportionate amount of markets and lines for women's sports than there are for men's sports is crazy. So we're really trying to show that there's an interest, there's a demand, and there's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, and speaking of lines, whales, sharks, if you will, in the betting world, the people that have that big money, they want to find the edge, right, in their lines. So it's like, hey, if they want to focus on something like the WNBA, where there's not a lot of media attention, you might be able to find a couple of those advantages. Vin, I'm going to come to you. We talked about the fan experience, and mainly I want to focus on the live betting, right? For example, last night you had Celtics take on the Heat. Both teams were down at one point. I think Boston was down maybe double digits. But if you want to bet on them to come back, the game's already started. How are you as a company getting that fan involved in their living room to take advantage of what they believe is going to happen?
Yeah, no, great question. And as I mentioned, it all comes back to this vision we have, this to turn the experience more like a stock betting experience, like a Robinhood. And there's like three core things when we think about that, if you break it down. The first, as I think Jamie mentioned, is that you got to make the odds more accessible. You have to understand what they are. They're the currency by which the customer is deciding whether to bet or not. So when we decide to make a market in that, -110 or -9, like, so for example, the Celtics, I think last night to win the series were plus 900. And I was trying to tell my company what that meant. That meant that was a 10% chance they were going to win the series. Nobody really gets that. So what we decided to do was to take those odds and turn them into probabilities. Much easier for the customer to understand. That's the currency now that we can make a market. It's the first thing, is just to make sure that that the customer understands exactly what they're doing. The next thing for the live experience is that we're making a market, is we provide extreme live volatility. What I mean by that is now you can see what the probability of the outcome is at any given point in time. Like you said, at one point the Celtics were down to like 20%, and they popped up to 60%, back down to 40%. We basically now provide instant two-way, always-on probability so that you as a customer can either get into the position, at 20%, let's say, and get right back out frictionlessly, like instantly. That liquidity is essential. Basically, the concept of availability of price. Too often, you're on a book and it's locked, like there's no price to cash out, or the cash out price isn't right. So that's the first thing, when we talk about liquidity. The second thing is to make sure that the fees are low, so that if you want to trade in and out or day trade the game, you can. If you're charging a customer 10% for every trade, basically, or 8%, they're not going to be able to do 4 or 5 trades. They're going to lose their money too fast. So that's really important. And then the final thing on the liquidity is size, meaning you want to be able to get down whatever it is, $100, maybe it's 5,000, maybe it's 10,000. Sometimes you'll see, $10 is what you can bet. That's not true liquidity. And finally, I think you got to make it super visual. And we talk a lot about Robinhood, but you got to dynamically present the experience to the customer in a way that they can follow it. So we track the graphs. There's a lot of numbers going around in sports betting, and we think that visualization is really important. And so I think if you check out how we do it and how we Robinhood it, it makes it, again, more accessible. So when you combine all of that, what I really love about it is that basically our experience is mirroring sports, in the sense, as a sports fan, what I love most about sports is the true unpredictability, the twists and turns of how those games turn around. And our experience, because if it's a market and it's probability based and it's instant and you can see it moving, as I said, 10% to 70% to 10, back down to 8.
Yeah.
You now can feel in your position, especially if you've got a bet, how it's going up and down. And that feeling, I think, is important, of course, and also the control to actually transact. So I think it's pretty interesting.
Especially because you don't have to wait for an event to end to find out, hey, did I win or lose, right? If you feel like, hey, I bet on this team, they're up 10, cool, I'm out because I don't trust them to not blow the lead. I totally get it. Joe, when it comes to NASCAR, there's no chance to go ahead and bet at the track itself, but there are obviously so many sportsbook that have invested in offering odds of NASCAR. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So on the at-track portion, a lot of that is based on legislation in states and how states decide to go about market access. So far, NASCAR has participated in that in a couple of different states, and hopefully in the future, teams and leagues will be involved in that process as well. So you're right. At the moment, there is no sort of retail sports book at a NASCAR track. Hopefully that changes in the future. In terms of the online experience, like I said, it's very important for our fans to have not only a robust product, but also a consistent product across books. We recognize our fans utilize our official partners. They utilize our non-official partners in some cases. So we like to have a consistent offering across sports books, and we really rely on our data partners to do that. In terms of live betting, we talked, I think Jeffrey mentioned earlier in the last panel, we're in the very early innings of sports betting. NASCAR is probably even a little bit behind. NASCAR was not a widely offered product before legalization in the places where you could bet. So having NASCAR as a available betting product is still new to our fan base. So there's a lot of education that needs to go on around, to Vin's point, around what does plus 120 mean to win a stage or to end up in the top 3. So there's education that we do on platform. There's education we work with influencers who have a platform to talk to our fan base about how to bet on the sport. But that's not to say that we're not pushing in the in-race direction as well. You've seen over the last couple of years, in-race for NASCAR has not only been invented and put out to the public in some cases, but we're continuing to grow on that and make our 3.5, 4-hour races into kind of snackable 10-lap chunks where people can kind of engage throughout the race whenever they decide to tune in, or if they have a hunch that they want to bet on during a certain period of the race.
Yeah, and kind of like how I mentioned with Vin, you want to go ahead and have that instant gratification of, hey, am I wrong? Am I right? Did I make money or not? So I was actually looking at NASCAR odds before we hopped on, and there are odds where it's like, yeah, you can pick who's going to win, but it's also, hey, who's going to be leading after the 10th lap is finished, or whatever the case may be. Or in MLB, it's called the first 5 innings. So that instant gratification, heck, matter of fact, in MLB, it's also who's going to score first. Will there be a score in the first inning or not? But I could keep going on and on. Lee, it's your job to bring the people. Right? You're the one to say, hey, look, you guys go ahead and take care of business once I get them to you, but you're the one who gets the customer acquisition. what cool things are you doing and using technology to kind of help with those customer acquisition strategies? And I mean, you've worked with a lot of different sports books as well, and DraftKings, FanDuel, you name it, you've worked with them. What is that you're doing that's being successful?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we heard this morning, was the focus on increased customers acquisition while also focusing on profitability. And I think the challenge that exists in most traditional marketing mediums is that those two can have some undesirable trade-offs, right? So really what we're doing is we're working with sports betting brands on that outcome-based model. And that's just a way of saying that they're only paying when a specific action or outcome occurs. So in the world of sports betting, that's generally going to be a new user registration through their web form. It could be the installation of their mobile app. It could be a first-time deposit or first wager, but they're always paying for actual results. And then beyond that, we're optimizing traffic against down funnel events or data that we're ingesting from these brands. So in the example of a mobile app install, if they're then giving us signals for first-time deposit ratios, we're really optimizing the traffic to drive users from placements that are having the best propensity to not only deposit initially, but stay engaged. So, for an overall view, we like the outcome-based model and believe it's really the unlock for aligning customer acquisition and increased market share with increased profitability. And we can apply that to web, to app, across user journeys and traffic channels, for DFS, for sportsbook, for casino. And then beyond that, AI has been a huge buzzword in this space, and it's had such an impact in regards to how we position brands for the most optimal placements, especially in the face of enhanced privacy headwinds. So we're really using AI to better enhance contextual targeting, putting the brands in front of consumers that have a high affinity for this product type or for this product category. So in short, we continue to layer on technology, really AI driven, to deliver this outcome-based approach. And I think it aligns so well with what we've heard throughout the morning in regards to wanting to grow market share, whether it be in a new state that now has acceptance or enhancing market share in existing channels. And couldn't be more excited to continue to align with the strongest brands in this space.
I'm glad you mentioned AI, because obviously we've heard about it in terms of, the chat GPT, this, that, the other. I didn't even think that it could be involved in, customer acquisition. So I'm glad you went ahead and brought that up. I've got about 10 minutes. I'm going to kind of go around the horn. Jamie, I'm going to come back to you. We talked about betting on women. I'd love to know, why do you think it is that so many women, I believe you said 45% was for one of the major sports that you mentioned, watch the games? Why do you think it is that they don't bet on the games as much as maybe men do? And I also want to see how y'all are getting them involved. And we had the college basketball March Madness for women, LSU. Everyone heard about the trash talking, the victory there. How are y'all trying to get involved into educating women to bet on these games if they're interested to do so?
Well, I think the first thing is, it's a huge opportunity, right? It's still getting legalized. Sports betting's been sports' dirty little secret for a very long time. So I think there's been a bigger, a larger percentage of men that's betting, but mostly going through their bookies. Obviously, like, it hasn't been legal until recently. Now that it is, because in Europe there's a huge percentage of women that bet, and there's more people in the States that are women who bet on casino games or do more mobile games. Like, the opportunity is massive. But when you look at the products that are out there right now, they're speaking to mostly men, whether it's the personalities, the content that's being created, whether it's even the logos and like the colors. Like, there's nothing that's more accessible, more inclusive. And so we're trying to create that opportunity. And a big piece of it is education around sports betting, because, again, when women betting, a lot of times, well, everyone betting, it's socially driven, like I was saying, but especially for women, social is a big reason, and storylines is a big reason. So that's like what a lot of what we're building is, and we have newsletters and content, is giving people a reason to care and giving people a reason or a way to bet that's not just driven by stats and analytics. While that's important, it's also important to have like the intangibles and like the stuff that athletes bring and the storytelling around why it's interesting to bet.
It's interesting you mentioned the education part, because when I would tell people, my friends, not just women, but even men, be like, yeah, I bet on this team, I risked $100 to get 100 back. They're like, you only get 100 back. I'm like, no, I get the 100 that I put in, and then I get an additional 100, so I get a profit. So like, yeah, education is such a big part of sports betting. I'd love to kind of go around the horn, and Jamie, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Joe, Lee, and finish off with Vin. What's in the pipeline that your companies are focused on, maybe in terms of fan experience, but just overall, would love to know what we can look forward to in terms of what you're doing.
We're really focused on the experiential part also, because especially with women, it's harder. Like if you're first learning how to bet, even just signing up to a sports book is intimidating. You have to put your social security number in, you have to link into your bank account. So we're starting to bring the betting academy experience. Our goal is to bring it to different stadiums that do have the betting live, and starting to bring people together to interact and to learn. We have boot camps that we're doing in betting that are virtual webinars, but also in person at different stadiums and arenas.
Oh, sign me up for that. I'm sure there's a thing or two I could learn. Love that. The betting academy. Who would have thought? And that's cool, because you kind of mentioned it back in the day. It's like a hush hush, right? Like, hey, who do you have money on? It'd be like a quiet, terrible stigma around it. But now you've got ESPN talking about the odds and what's this, that, the other. So I love that. The betting academy. Joe, what's in the pipeline for NASCAR?
Yeah, so we're going to continue what we've been doing with our current fan base for the in-race experience or pre-race experience of, having some level of betting education on broadcast, at the track, on our platforms, on our social handles. But in terms of looking forward, to Jamie's point, I think that there's a lot of betting adjacent top of the funnel mechanisms that we can widen who we're talking to. So when you think about virtual sports, which is, a very mature product globally, NASCAR has been getting involved in that, and we've actually launched a game internationally and hope to launch one in the U.S. Pretty soon here. In terms of iLottery, there are opportunities there. We have a partnership with Powerball that just started this year, and then again, that broadens the audience of who we're talking to and the demographic that we're talking to. Parimutuel wagering, NASCAR lends itself very well to parimutuel wagering, and there's opportunities and conversations that we're having in that space as well. And then finally, iGaming and iCasino. Jamie mentioned the demographics there and how that differs from sports betting. Whether it's having NASCAR branded slots or other types of games on iCasino, I think broadens the scope of who we're talking to, and then maybe getting them to bet on the sport. And the last thing I'll mention is on the free-to-play side, we have a partnership with Facebook where there's a NASCAR free-to-play game on Facebook, and the demographic of men to women is about 2 to 1, which is a lot higher than what we see in the sports betting space. So we're seeing more engagement from women in that game as well, and maybe that might lead to other ways, whether it's fantasy sports or sports betting, for them to be involved.
I love that you mentioned the lottery side of things. And, there's a reason they got me to do this panel, because I've got the Georgia Lottery app right on my phone. The Powerball hits $1 billion. I'm making sure I buy a $2 ticket. Lee, we talked about, AI, but what else you got going on at Perform CB?
Yeah, I love that $1 billion is your minimum buying amount.
I got to have the edge, right? It's all about odds. I need plus EV if I'm going to buy a $2 ticket and donate my money.
Yeah, well, you carved us out some extra time, so I love you for that. I'll expand a little bit on the AI component of it. So I see a further utilization of the data. We're really starting to see some strong correlations between placements that perform well for different investment platforms, different streaming companies, ticketing and event apps and sites, and how that audience has a strong affinity for sports betting. So we'll see that continue to increase. I'm really looking forward to seeing brands in this space become better at all-around acquisition, whether it be through the app or through the web. Right now, I think we see leaders in each of those kind of user experiences, and an opportunity for brands to really enhance and optimize how they perform there. And then lastly, I'll highlight the channels. We're seeing more channels if we think about like influencer and CTV, which historically have been less outcome-based, move into this outcome-based model. And we just think that represents such a great opportunity for sports betting brands to continue to grow their user base, their active users, in a much smarter fashion, really paying on a performance or results only model.
I love it. Look forward to more of that. And last, Vin, we're going to talk about Mojo. One thing that was really cool is that you can bet on a player's career, right? So if I believe that Lamar Jackson, now that he's got Odell on his team, if he's going to win a Super Bowl, I can go ahead and bet on him and then cash out as soon as he wins a Super Bowl and whatever the case may be. So that's really cool that y'all are doing. I downloaded the app, but Uncle Sam won't let me play because I don't live in New Jersey. But what else is in the pipeline for Mojo before we go?
Yeah. No, great. I mean, we just launched a few months ago in September of last year. So our first thing was trying to find that product market fit. I think we got it now. Our NPS is 70 daily. People who are in the app spend an average of 75 minutes in the app when they're betting. So we think we have it. So it's very, having come from Amazon and diapers, it's very, very military style. We've got to add states. We got to add selection. We got to pour the marketing gas on. We just got to execute now that I think we have that electric product. One thing you will see is that we will launch a gamified version itself, like that is sort of similar to DFS, like introducing this sports stock market to California, Texas, Florida in a totally lawful way, because that'll allow us to access probably 55, 60% of the population just in the next few weeks.
Awesome. Thank you. So looking forward to that. And yeah, give me a promo code when there's legalization.
Absolutely.
In Georgia. But Jamie, Lee, Joe, Vinit, thank you so much for hopping on for the Sports Betting Summit, especially when it comes to fan experience. We really appreciate your time here today.